Welcome to Cinematic Excrement. Not too long ago, I was browsing through the DVD section at a local electronics store when I came upon the clearance rack. Now, normally the stuff this particular store puts on clearance isn't marked down nearly as much as you would expect, if at all. So I wasn't expecting to find anything worthwhile. But strangely enough, on this day, I found several movies that could be had for about the price of a Redbox rental. I snatched up a few of them because, at that price, why not? And we'll be looking at one of them today. Desert Thunder.
This low-budget action movie was released in 1999 and stars Richard Tyson and the Baldwin brother no one cares about. Not him, the other one. No, the other one. He's not even related. That's the one, Daniel Baldwin. The film was directed by Jim Wynorski, a legend in the world of exploitation and B-grade cinema. He studied the art of filmmaking under the king of B-movies himself, Roger Corman, and has worked on well over 100 movies in various capacities and using various pseudonyms throughout his 31-year career, including Chopping Mall, Little Miss Millions, aka Home for Christmas, and The Bear Wench Project. It seems the man values quantity over quality, but the length of his resume is pretty damn impressive nonetheless.
I don't expect I'll be terribly impressed with Desert Thunder, seeing as how I paid all of $2 for it. But let's take a look and see if I at least got my money's worth.
Our movie begins with a group of Navy SEALs skydiving out of an airplane into a large body of water. And they're somehow wearing scuba gear when they land, even though they were clearly wearing combat boots when they jumped. After a short swim, they arrive at Seaport, Eastern Mediterranean.
Thank you for being specific.
The SEALs are there to rescue a man named Hashim Tariq, played by Mark Kasabani, who was caught leaking information to the Americans and is currently being interrogated by Ahmad Yusuf, an Iraqi soldier who speaks English for some reason. And due to the Foley guy not being able to time his sound effects properly, it sounds like this slap hits him twice. Yusuf demands to know what Hashim planned to do with the photographs he stole.
You will speak before you die, and be certain of one thing, my friend. You will die.
Well, that doesn't give him much incentive to talk now, does it? You suck at this.
Yusuf then brings in Hashim's brother and shoots him dead right then and there. Unsurprisingly, this doesn't put Hashim in a talking mood either. Seriously, man, what did you expect? But before he can shoot Hashim, the SEALs burst into the room, guns blazing, taking out everyone but Yusuf, who miraculously escapes. Their getaway copter arrives a moment later, and they hightail it out of Seaport, Eastern Mediterranean, and return home to good old country, Central North America.
Now, some of you might be thinking the footage I just showed you looks kind of familiar, even if you've never seen Desert Thunder before. There's a reason for that.
There's a bit of Godfrey Ho-inspired cut-and-paste action going on here, and it's not the only time Wynorski has done this in his career. All of the footage featuring Yusuf and Hashim, as well as the close-up shots of the SEALs, who, by the way, we never see again, was shot by Wynorski. The rest of it is stock footage from a 1990 action film called Navy SEALs, which, incidentally, I don't really recommend. And now it all makes sense, doesn't it? That's why Yusuf suddenly disappears from the interrogation room when the SEALs burst in. He was never there to begin with. That's why masks spontaneously appear on the SEALs' faces. And as for the combat boots suddenly turning into flippers, well, that mistake actually did happen in Navy SEALs, so I can't blame Wynorski for that one. Obviously, this recycling of footage was done for financial reasons. When you're trying to make an A-level action movie on a B-level budget, using cheaply available stock footage is one way to accomplish this. And as far as cut and paste jobs go, it's actually fairly well done. In this scene, anyway. As we'll see later on, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Back to the story. We then head to Washington, D.C., and they do specify that one, where three military bigwigs are talking about a new kind of nerve gas recently created by the Iraqis that they've threatened to launch at Europe. Exactly where, they don't know, but they plan to launch a covert operation to stop the Iraqis before they find out the hard way. One of them, General Tom Brockton, played by Robert Walden, suggests a covert airstrike. Go in, bomb the place, and get the hell out. Unfortunately, the US doesn't have a squadron of covert fighter pilots. Logically, there's only one thing to do.
Put together a special unit composed almost entirely of Air Force rejects. I'm not kidding, that's really their plan. You'd think they'd want the best of the best for a super important operation like this, but no.
Now, they do give a reason for this, albeit a flimsy one. They don't have congressional approval, so the mission has to be completely off the record with no military personnel involved. Of course, they'll be provided military equipment, and obviously these three gentlemen are involved to some extent, but whatever, we'll go with it. Tom pays a visit to the home of Colonel Lee Miller, played by Daniel Baldwin, and he tells Lee about the Iraqis' new nerve gas. He also tells him President Saddam Hussein... President Ali Aziz, another Iraqi who speaks English for some reason, plans to launch the gas using a modified Soviet R-17 with a range of approximately 3,000 kilometers.
Well, that would give it a range of just about anywhere in Europe.
Well, assuming they launch it from Iraq, it won't reach Spain, Portugal, Belgium, France, the Netherlands, Germany, Luxembourg, Switzerland, the British Isles, and pretty much all of Scandinavia. But apart from that, yes, just about anywhere in Europe. Also, a Scud with a range of 3,000 kilometers. That sound right to you? To Wikipedia! Okay, so it turns out the Soviet R-17 had a range of approximately 300 kilometers, not 3,000. Now, the movie does say it's a modified R-17, but 10 times the range? I don't claim to be a missile expert, and by all means correct me if I'm wrong, but I am tentatively calling bullshit.
Tom wants Lee to lead the charge on this covert operation, but Lee is hesitant about returning to duty. According to the flashbacks that keep randomly popping up in this scene, some guy named Colby died during a mission Lee was in charge of, and he blames himself for it. Even though he clearly has some serious psychological issues and doesn't appear to be in the best physical shape either, Tom convinces Lee to join the operation because he's the only one who can do it.
Right.
But Lee only agrees to take the job if he can have the assistance of Ralph Streets, played by Richard Tyson. Why he needs him, I don't really know. He doesn't join them on the mission itself, he just follows Lee around with a clipboard and acts as the drill sergeant during training. I'm sure any number of people could have done this. It seems like a cheap ploy to make this character look more important than he actually is. It's also mentioned he was discharged due to issues with alcoholism, but this has no effect on the story, so I don't know why they bothered. Now that we have our leader and his number 2, it's time to meet the rest of the team, all but one of whom have been discharged from the Air Force, and most of them dishonorably, of course. First, we have Bobby, played by Tim Abel. Street says his nickname is Jet, although his girlfriend calls him Bad Bob for some reason. It's kind of weird. Bobby is currently serving time in a military prison for punching a general in the face. Apparently, the Air Force frowns on this sort of thing. Who knew? And judging by his behavior with the guards, prison time hasn't helped his anger management issues at all. But his girlfriend doesn't seem to mind.
Michelle, will you marry me? Will you marry me?
Yes.
Aww. I give it a year.
Lee offers Bobby a full pardon if he agrees to join the covert op, and he signs up without hesitation. Then we have Anthony, played by Lenny Giuliano, who has appeared in several of Jim Wynorski's movies and also wrote the screenplay for this one. Now I know who to blame. He's currently working in a hospital kitchen and was discharged from the Air Force for incompetence after crashing 3 F-16s. Just the kind of guy you want flying a plane. Next, Johnny Jones, played by Stevie Johnson, who works as a manager for some jackass rapper and was discharged due to problems with his eyesight. Again, just the kind of guy you want flying a plane. Then there's Allie Malone, played by Stacey Haydock, who works as an airplane mechanic and was discharged for having an affair with her CO. Well, at least we finally have someone whose discharge has nothing to do with her ability to fly. I'll take it. And finally, we have Hashim, the guy the SEALs rescued earlier in the movie, and the only member of this motley crew who was not discharged because he was never in the US Air Force to begin with. But he is apparently a pilot and eager to get some revenge on the people who slaughtered his family. And he conveniently has a friend in Iraq who still works for Yusuf and can feed them information. So just to recap, we have the leader, the drunk, the asshole, the idiot, the token black guy, the chick, and the foreigner.
Behold the power of stock characters!
Their training for this mission apparently takes place at the former Jackson Army Air Base, which is actually not a completely abandoned military base as it's portrayed in the movie. It's a publicly owned airport and probably not the best place to go if you want to train pilots in secret. They probably would have been better off using a fictional name. I did find this bit of dialogue interesting.
On the way in,
I didn't see any aircraft.
In the hangar, puke. This is a covert operation. We do not exist.
Of course, the real reason we don't see any aircraft on the ground is their budget wouldn't allow them to film this on an actual airfield. But most low-budget filmmakers, and hell, even some of the big-budget ones, wouldn't even bother to address this, so I will give them credit for that. Once our unlikely heroes are briefed on their mission, it's time for the training sequence. This is where the cut-and-paste nature of the film becomes much more obvious. The aerial shots are all clearly taken from a different movie with a much higher budget than this one, and by comparison, the cockpit shots look like they were filmed in the director's backyard. And apparently their technique for trying to hide this is shaking the camera like they're high on bath salts. Sorry, Jim, you're not fooling anyone. Since this squadron is made up of the most dysfunctional people they could find, it doesn't take long for a fight to break out. One day in the mess hall, some of the guys start talking about Allie's highly publicized affair with her former CO. Anthony decides to play the role of White Knight because someone has to, I guess, and he and Johnny start slugging it out. The Admiral we saw earlier in the film just happens to show up during the fight, no military personnel involved, and Johnny inadvertently hits him with a tray of food. I'm not exactly sure how, since Anthony was only standing a few feet away, and he really shouldn't have missed. Then again, he did say he had trouble with his eyesight, so I guess it works? Anyway, the Admiral threatens to shut down this Mickey Mouse operation, which would be the smartest move anyone has made in this movie thus far. But Lee has a talk with General Tom and the other general, I don't think they mention his name, and convinces them to keep everything going. He also informs his squad that from this day forward, they'll be known as the Shadow Dancers.
I think it means something like a fake, like it's not really there.
That or fancy name for loser.
Shadow dancers. I like it. It figures. Whether it means fake or loser, it both fits your cookie. I'm just kidding, man.
I don't understand this country.
Get it? 'Cause he's a foreigner.